Well, hello everyone, Texie88 here and welcome to my latest review. And now we're taking a look at the Sinclair ZX Spectrum adaptation of Milton Bradley's and Games Workshop's joint board game venture HeroQuest. The original board game came out in 1989 and was a hugely successful attempt to adapt the then very prevalent Dungeons and Dragons style fantasy gaming into a board game format, albeit with some simplification to make it more accessible to more people who perhaps aren't as immersed in the D&D lore as others. In fact, the game not only spawned a few expansion packs back in the day, but recently, Avalon Hill, back in 2021, after a successful 2020 campaign, managed to bring HeroQuest back, albeit in a slightly tweaked form. That's back in 2021. But we're taking a look at the ZX Spectrum version here. Although it came out for the 48K Spectrum as well, it's the 128K version I'm looking at here, hence the AY music that you're hearing in the background here. It also came out for the Commodore Amiga, Amstrad CPC, Atari ST, Commodore 64 and MS-DOS. So, as in the original board game, you play as four heroes, and one's a barbarian, one's a dwarf, one's an elf, and one's a wizard. The barbarian is the strongest of the characters and has more body / health points than the others. But he has the lowest evil magic resistance and he can't use any magic spells. The dwarf is slightly weaker and cannot use magic spells either, but he has the ability to disarm traps without need of an additional toolkit due to his innate ability to do so. The elf is just as good as the dwarf in terms of combat, but has one less health point than the dwarf, but he has limited magic capabilities. Wizard is the physically weakest of the four and is worse at attacking than the other three, but he can handle the most magic spells, and you can actually rename all of those. Well, for the purposes of the review, I'm going to leave the names as they are. So when you play, your wizard picks one spell set first, then the elf picks one, and whatever's left, the wizard gets all the rest. And you then get to pick one of the quests available to you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So there are 14 quests, just like in the original board game of the same name. This will be your final test before you set forth. Be sure to use all the skills that you have been taught. You must attempt to find your way out. Several monsters have been placed in the maze. They will try to stop you, so take care. Whoever finds his way out first will be rewarded with 100 gold coins. This may be used to buy equipment for the adventures to come. Now, my understanding is that is faithful to the first quest in the original UK release of the board game. It got tweaked in that first quest, and other aspects of the game got tweaked when it went to the United States, and the villain Morcar became Zargon over there, and some evil characters were made stronger than in this version. So you probably saw just here where this. I know it's not really controlled by a mouse, but I call it a mouse pointer for brevity. You see this this number 11 here. Now that was cycling until just a few minutes ago. That replaces the two 6-sided dice that were prevalent in the board game. So your actions are you can move in any of the directions shown. That's used to open a door that you're orthogonally next to. This allows you to look at your inventory. This is to attack an enemy that's next to you, or later on if you get a ranged weapon in line of sight. This allows you to look at a map of what's visible to you at the time. The sword icon is the barbarian. The axe icon is the dwarf. The wizard's hat is, as you probably guessed, the wizard. And and I can't quite make out what that is. I think it's a shorter sword, but that's the elf anyway. So and this are blockages, and these slight indentations show where either doors or other ways through are, such as additional paths. Like there's one there. So when we come to move the dwarf, you'll see that he's got the ability to look at least some way southwards, but because we haven't got to him yet, we haven't got line of sight to what he can see. So, as in the board game, each character can do one set of movement up to the number of squares on the rolled, which in this case is 11. And as you can see, I've now moved 11 spaces, so that's why it says 0 where that 11 was. So now if I wanted to do an action, I could do it, but I haven't got many means of doing an action, so that's Barbarian's turn over. I mean, there's nothing to attack, and I'm not orthogonally next to a door. So I click on this icon here to switch to the next character, which will be the dwarf. So I've just rolled a 7. So as you can see, he had a path going southward, which was not visible when we were still controlling the barbarian. So if you look on the map, you can see a clear path here, and there's a slight indentation here showing there's a door, and there's also an uninterrupted path between the dwarf and the wizard, so they can quite easily join forces with one another. So I'm gonna move the dwarf down towards the wizard. This time I'm going to use this key icon to open this door. And using the map, you can actually look inside and see what's there. And as you can see, there's a room with another door down there. And we've got an orc within the room. So I've got one more movement point left, as you can tell by the fact that there's still a number 1 here. Each time I took a step just then, that number depleted by 1. Now I can't actually attack this orc because he's not in one of the orthogonally adjacent spaces. So the dwarf can't really do anything, or at least he shouldn't be able to. But so this allows us to search for traps, doors and treasure. Now it's worth pointing out, in the original board game, if you've got an enemy within line of sight of you, you shouldn't be able to do this. But in this Spectrum version, you actually can search for traps, doors and treasure, even if you're in the same room as a monster. In the original board game, and in one other version I played, the Amiga version, you can't do that. You have to eliminate the odd monsters first, then, or get out of line of sight of them, then try it. So there are no secret doors. And this first level doesn't have any traps in it anyway. In the original board game it didn't. That's not really a spoiler, because the person playing the evil wizard would have been permitted to tell you that. So there's nothing more the dwarf can do. He's moved and he's had 1 action, so now we're on to the elf. And the elf's just rolled 8. So looking at the map, we can see that there's a door there, and there's also a door there, but that one can't access because of this blockage. So this door and that door are the only ones that the elf can go to. And as in the original board game, the heroes can move through each other, and the enemy monsters can move through each other, but heroes can't move through enemies and vice versa. So there's no enemies in this next room. I've run out of movement points, so I'm going to do a search action, search for... No. So there's no traps or secret doors in this room. And that's Elf's turn over. That's worth pointing out, even though you can actually do an action before movement, you can't do part of your movement allowance, then do an action, then do the rest of your movement allowance. Once you've taken, if you've moved, then once moved even just one square, then once you've taken an action, that ends your movement for the rest of that turn. And you might also see that there's a heart here that shows the number of body points. This number here with the question mark is mind points. That shows how resilient they are to evil magic spells inflicted on them. As I said earlier, the barbarian is the weakest in that regard. And this bag here shows how many gold coins this place is currently carrying. Now, one thing you can do in this is you can actually search for treasure even in corridors in the computerized versions. In the original board game version, you can only do that in rooms. So, and as in the original board game, you risk a wandering monster. So you probably briefly saw it. There was the orc had one sword icon, and I had at the very bottom of his stats, and nothing at the bottom of mine. The way it works is that the attacker tries to roll on attack dice more sword icons than the defender has shield icons, because the orc had rolled one sword icon and I didn't roll any shields. That meant it did hit one body point of damage. So that's why Wizard now only has 3 body points. If all those body points are reduced to 0, then the character is dead and is out for the rest of the game. Unlike in the original board game, he doesn't come back if you complete the quest and go on to the next one, whereas that would have revived him and revived any lost health points for any characters that had got to who'd survived one quest to go into the next. Neither happens in this computerized version, whereas which is unfaithful to the board game, and not to mention a bit cruel, especially knowing what I know about one particular quest later on that's very challenging. I won't spoil that. So Morcar, the evil pair, has his go. As I said earlier, anyone who's watching this from the United States, see, there's a shield there, but again, not enough. Yeah, as I was saying, anyone who's watching this from the States will know Morcar better as Zargon. Right, so I'm going to... And another thing you do, you actually click directly onto the square in order to move them. Although that obviously that doesn't work so well when you're transitioning from one screen to the next. So I'm going to open this door. Just have a look inside. There's no monsters in there. So I'm going to search. Notice how my movement points have instantly gone to 0 because of what I said earlier. If you interrupt your movement allowance with an action, that's it. You can't move any further no matter what. Not until your next turn. So Barbarian's just found 25 gold coins. So as you can see, his gold coin allowance has now gone to 25 because of what he's just found. And that's Barbarian's turn over because he's done movement and an action. Right, I've rolled an 8, but because I'm next to that dwarf, I'm going to try and attack it. So what happened is, here's my dwarf character, so I actually click on the enemy I want to attack. So I've scored two. As you see, there are 2 swords below dwarf and no shields. That meant I killed the orc, and because because he's had his action, he can still move because he didn't move a muscle before doing that action. Yeah, as I said, there are no traps in this, but in other ones, you have to be worried about searching for traps to potentially avoid causing unnecessary injury to yourself and the other members of your group. So there's where the dwarf is, and that's the door he's just opened. There's nothing in this adjoining room. So he's got 4 more movement points left, so he may as well spend those. Now I can't, even though I've gone into a new room, I can't actually search for anything in it because I already used an action to kill that orc. As I said, each character only has 1 movement and 1 action tops. So let's search for treasure. Potion of healing. So if I'm running low on health, I can simply take that to restore lost body points. So I've just opened this door, so I'm going to have a look inside. So there's nothing. There's the elf, which I'm currently controlling. There's nothing in this adjoining room either. And I didn't have any movement points left anyway, so elf's turn's over. And his wizard. As you can see, my wizard only has 1 health point left. So if he takes 1 more hit, he's dead. So I'm going to see one sword and 1 shield for my wizard and orc respectively. So his 1 shield blocked my 1 sword, so he didn't take any damage as a result. But because I've rolled 7, I'm going to get away from the orc. So I've just opened this door that's next to me, so I'm going to have a quick peek inside. Opening doors does not count towards actions. So there's, in that room whose door I've just opened, there's another orc in there, so I don't particularly want to go in there. And this is about to highlight a problem with the computerized adaptations of the board game. You'll see when it comes to Morkar's turn. In the original board game, those orcs would have been from the player controlling Morkar would have been free to move those orcs towards the wizard and both attack. But in this computerized version, they can only attack you if they're actually physically visible on the same screen as you. This is a rather worrying exploit, and even in the Amiga version I've also played, that version has exactly the same problem. So yeah, I've just searched for traps and secret doors, and a secret door opened right here. So move there, open that door and have a peek inside. So there's an orc in that room, and there's nothing in... This is the secret door I've just opened, by the way, that door just there. But I'm not going to go in the room with the orc for obvious reasons. Dwarf. Now because this isn't necessary, you can search for things in here. So no traps nor secret doors in this room. Now, you may remember just moments ago I pointed out that enemies can only attack you if they're visible on the same screen as you. There's a similar problem involving searching for traps and secret doors. In the original board game, line of sight would be the only thing that limited you. Not whether or not there's a bit just off screen in another section, and that is a problem. Because it means that if you're in, say, a part of a corridor and search for traps along the lengthy ones, such as the top one, whose horizontal corridor completely goes along the very top with no interruptions. If one character is in the top left corner and searches for traps, in the board game it would have gone right the way down to that first blockage southwards and right the way along the whole of the corridor eastwards to do the search, whereas in this and in the Amiga version at least you can it'll only search within the room you're in. So if there was a trap just off screen in the next room and you didn't, then you would activate it. This causes some unfair damage and potential deaths. So that too is not particularly faithful to the original board game. And I know there's an orc there, but there's a blockage here, so it can't actually get to me. And I've got 8 movement points left. I'll open this door, have a peek inside. Nothing in that room, but again, because I've already taken an action in that room that the dwarf started his turn in this turn there, I can't do it again here. And I know what's in this room because that's the same room that the wizard opened earlier. So that's dwarf's turn over, so elf. Search for traps and doors. See, another secret door opened. So that's his turn over. So yeah, I rolled the full movement to points of 12. Now, even though that orc in that room can't attack me, the same goes for the one which I left on just off screen in the corridor to the right. I can still cast a magic spell to take them out. So to do that, oh no, I pressed the wrong button. Unfortunately, you can't undo if you press the wrong button. Which is kind of annoying, really. So I'm going to leave the wizard where he is. So it's Morcar's turn. Again, because none of the enemies are visible on at the same time in the same screen area as any of my heroes, they genuinely can't attack me, even though in some cases they easily could have done in the original board game. Let's open this door. Map. So there's nothing in that adjacent room. Search. Is there another secret door open there? And because he's moved and done an action, in this case that's search, his turn's over. 5. So he's got 50, the dwarf's just found 50 gold coins in the room he's in. But even though I've rolled 5 and haven't moved yet, I don't have to move. I can stay put, and in fact I'm going to. Let's have a look in here. So the elf's just uncovered a room with an orc in it. Now I'm going to try and cast a spell. Now, weapon comes into play if between quests you've managed to buy other weapons to increase their capability, and you can also buy armor to increase the number of defend dice they can roll when attacked. But I'm going to try and cast a sleep spell on that orc, but it won't let me do it. Presumably because I'm not in the same room as it. Again, in the board game I would have been able to do that because I've clearly got line of sight to that orc, but because it's not on the same screen I can't do it. But because I haven't actually carried out an action, I can still do movement. Let's attack this. No, I missed. I didn't roll. I didn't roll any swords, so the elf's attack completely missed. And now his turn's over because he's both moved and attacked. Now wizard. And as I said earlier, wizard has a greater watch of spells available to him. But again, because I'm not in the same room as that enemy, it's not letting me cast a spell. So see what happens if I'm actually in the room with the enemy I want to attack in it. So it should work this time. So Fire of Wrath. Oh, I tried to do it with the weapon. I think I was supposed to select it from the inventory first, then do it. Maybe never mind. Trouble is, now I've done an action. If that orc manages to wound me even just once, that wizard's going to die, and he's got no. Yeah, my wizard's dead because he rolled three uncountered swords. But you can pretty much see how this game works. So that was Gremlin Graphics' 1991 computer game adaptation of the board game HeroQuest, which came out 2 years earlier, courtesy of a joint venture between Milton Bradley, aka MB Games, and Games Workshop. And all things considered, I don't think it's as faithful a conversion as it could have been. Gremlin did a better job of converting Space Crusade, another Milton Bradley and Games Workshop joint venture, which came out in 1990 in its original board game form, more successfully to home computers, but HeroQuest, not so much. Graphics, very nice and clear, uses 3D isometric style, except for the map, and generally everything works as it should. But one thing that's well, actually, no, I'll get to that later on. It's not graphics related, and the nice use of colour on the screen when obviously not in the gameplay area because of clash issues. But the things such as the wizard in the top right corner, they managed to get clever use of colour in without much, if any, attribute problems, or at least none that are overly noticeable and glaringly problematic. Sound, well, not so much in the way of sound effects, but you get this tune playing in the background and it helps keep a little bit of atmosphere. I'm presuming that the 48K version doesn't have the background music. At the time of recording this, I've not seen the 48K Spectrum version in action, so I get the feeling that one will be multi-loads, though, either for each individual quest or for clumps of quests, because I don't think all of them are going to fit into 48K. Gameplay. Well, one thing that is odd is that the instructions for the Spectrum version say that the movements for left, right, up and down are Z, X, OK respectively, when it's actually the box standard QAOP. I mean, space is fire slash select, which is correct as to what is in the manual, but initially that's going to confuse people, especially when you use those same things to control what happens in the menus at the start and between quests. And as I've pointed out, several things that are not au fait with what happens in the board game, and some of it's to its detriment in various different ways. Some which make aspects ridiculously easy, like potentially being able to attack an enemy that's adjacent to you that's outside of the screen area, but still within line of sight, whereas they can't attack you. And of course, as you saw in this, enemies that are not on the same screen as you don't even move towards you to attack you, even though in the board game they absolutely would have been within range to do so. I mean, those orcs can move eight spaces. Yeah, as much as the HeroQuest board game is a classic in its own right, even though it's a bit challenging, as a lot of it's based on luck with the dice rolls. I don't think this is a particularly faithful adaptation. As much as it pains me to do it, I cannot give it an 8 or a 9 because of this. I mean, its only real advantage is that it's cheaper. It would have been cheaper than the actual board game itself, but I can only realistically give this version 7 out of 10. I won't go into again why that is, but I've already pointed out some problems with it. Yeah, and especially as I pointed out earlier, if one of your heroes only has 1 health point and manages to find the exit, they'll still only have 1 health point going into the next quest, which is a bit of a problem because it pressurizes one of the 2 magic users to use 1 or both healing spells, depending on which character it is, to get them back up to having a decent amount of health points. Whereas it would, in the board game, it would have refreshed back to its maximum between quests, and any character that had died in the quest just ended would have come back. And I also don't think it's possible in the computerized version to give items from the inventory of one character to another. So if for example, you've got a healing potion and another player badly needed it, I haven't found a way of being able to actually give the healing potion to this other character so that they can actually use it and heal themselves and put themselves in a health-wise better situation. That is not a problem in the original board game. So, yeah, noble attempt at adapting the board game, but I don't think it's as faithful as it could have been. With a bit more thought, it could have been more like its board game incarnation. So, anyway, I hope you enjoyed this review. Hope to catch you on another video soon. Texie88 out.